I want to start out by offering some reassurance to all of you. And that is that in the next 70 minutes, we are going to be sharing a great deal of information with you. And it's our goal then to allow for about 20 minutes of question and answer time. I can promise you that that's not going to seem like enough time to get to all of your questions. And so I want all of you to know that we will be offering ongoing support to you in a variety of forms that Amanda will talk about at the end of the session. But rest assured that whatever your questions are, we will answer them, even if we don't do it at the end of the session today. Feel free to put questions in the chat, and we will try to address them during the last 20 minutes. And if we're not able to do that, we will get back to you individually. We carefully crafted the title of today's presentation, Aging Solo but Not Alone, because we want to convey that you may feel that you have a very thin support network, or maybe no support network at all. But we want you to know that there are resources in our community, and we want to help you identify them, whether they are in your personal community, in your faith community, or in the larger general community. There are resources, and we will help lead you to them, whether that happens today or in a follow-up session. Let me also offer a bit of a clarification. Some of the documents that we will share with you, and at times during our comments, we will refer to family. We use this term in the broadest sense to include friends and others in your life. We know that family doesn't necessarily mean a blood connection. Each one of you here today is here for your own reasons, your own very unique reasons. And this has to do with your perception that you are either, as I said, have a thin support network or none at all. So you may be thinking of yourself as aging solo, or even as an elder orphan. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. Do you want to advance the slide, Amanda? Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what does it mean to be aging solo? And it probably means different things to different people, but generally speaking, people at this age, and I'm in this age, by the way, later in life, who feel like their safety net, they're without a safety net, without a family member or a close friend who will readily step up to provide physical or emotional support over time. Let me also add that maybe you have a person in your life who is your close family member or friend, but you're concerned about what will happen if that person is not available or if that person predeceases you. So you have no obvious person to take on this role. Other terms that you may see used are elder orphan, kinless senior, or single ager. Okay, so why is this so important now? Well, we know that by 2030, 20% of people will be older than the age of 65. And that as we come into the older times of our life, or the older part of our life, we face increasing debility. So there are things that happen to our bodies and our minds that make us less able to make decisions for ourselves. We know, by the way, that 50% of all people will be unable to make decisions for themselves at the end of their life. And so they do need to turn to other people. Now, we also know that more and more people are finding themselves to be childless by choice or by circumstance. 20% of all people are childless, which is double that of previous generations. Older adults will outnumber children by the year 2035. More and more older adults have never married or are divorced than in previous generations. And 42% of people over the age of 65 are living alone. So this is the big question, and this is why you are here today, I'm sure. Who will speak for me? This is of concern to you. And also, how do I choose a person to speak for me? And how do I prepare them? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Over to you, Amanda.
All right, thank you. So as Constance outlined, the growing number of older people, which we've known forever that that's going to happen, and how the demographic is shifting in terms of what kind of family support they do or they don't have. We want to take a look at how care in later life, when it's needed, is usually provided. And the thing that almost every person will tell you when you ask them how they want to age and where do they want to live and how do they want that to look is that they want to age in place and that they want to stay in their own households and their communities as long as possible. And overall, that's happening. Almost 93% of older people reside in the community at any one time. About 5% of people live in a long-term care facility, a nursing center, and then about 2% in an assisted living. About half of older people overall will spend some time in a nursing facility, but usually those stays are short and related to some kind of illness or rehab or some sort of accident. All of these statistics are based on people over the age of 65, which is a pretty large age group and a range. Those in the oldest cohorts, as you get to be over 85, over 90, over 95, your chances of needing institutional or more robust care increase. When care is needed in the later stages of life, whether it's periodic assistance with your household tasks or finances, or even personal care, over and above family members are the people that provide that on the front line. And of course, that can be supplemented with informal assistance with friends, neighbors, as well as various types of paid caregivers. But overall, solo agers, because of that kind of natural lack of a base of what we term family, are less likely to be able to remain in their homes. And that's why we're here thinking about this and planning now, and I applaud you all for that, to think of ways that we might be able to help ourselves stay where we want to be and get good decision making behind us if we were to need that. So I'm going to let Claire jump in here and talk a little bit about late life care for solo agers.
Okay. Hi, I'm Claire Morrow with Caring Stewardship, and I'm a fiduciary and a case manager. And I think one of the things that I have seen more often than not is that people put off the decision about who they would like to help them in making decisions if they're not able to themselves or if they need someone to care for them later on. And so I think you all need to realize that if you don't make a decision, somebody else is going to make it for you, and it may not be the decision that you would want. So you need to think honestly with yourself in terms of how you are physically now, how you are cognitively now, and who do you have in your network that might be somebody that can provide you with some assistance as you age. For myself, I have asked several friends, I live alone, I've asked several friends that we kind of watch each other's back and that we tell each other honestly if we see the person slipping or having trouble making decisions. So first you need to do is kind of educate yourself about what could possibly happen to you with your particular health, if you have a high propensity to dementia in your family, and also thinking about what would make your life as enjoyable as possible, even if you don't have the same capabilities that you have today. talking with your doctor about if you have any major health issues, talking with your doctor about the kinds of things that you can expect going forward. And whether or not that's physical limitations, or it also includes some cognitive loss. And dementia, that's a really big discussion point for a lot of people right now. Dementia isn't when you forget where you put your keys or where you put your phone. It's when you look at your phone and you don't know what it's for. And so understand the different types of dementia as best as you can in terms of anyone in your bloodline. And just because you have a family member who has dementia doesn't mean that that's going to be true for you. And then just kind of with your friends, you know, start to put together, what would it look like when I reach my, you know, 90s or whatever it is, and I can't do certain things. What things bring me pleasure? And I think it's important that you think about all that.
Yeah, and as Claire sort of alluded to there, in this moment where you're trying to think of someone that could do this for you, be your healthcare agent, your decision maker, this group really needs to think creatively. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the resources that we have and that we're putting together for that. But always thinking about a network of friends that might be in a similar situation as you are, that you might be able to share this role for each other. A lot of people will find help in their faith community if they're a part of that, or a different social circle like a club. Some places there are aging solo groups, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, about what we're trying to put together for that. But no matter how and who you choose, the really important thing here is that you're considering your healthcare values and documenting your wishes to then communicate to this decision maker and this person that you choose. Even in a situation where if you don't find an agent, it's still very important that you've communicated at least your preferences with your doctor and with anybody that might be around at your end of life. And all of this is called advanced care planning. And so I'm going to hand it off to Sue for a bit here so that we can, actually, no, I'm not. This is where we are right now, what I just talked about. So thinking beyond the usual line of husband, spouse, and family as a medical agent, and thinking a little bit more creatively. And then, as Claire mentioned, and she will talk about in detail a little bit later, if there's absolutely no one in your extended circle that is appropriate or that you can assign this role to, then there are professionals in the community that do this for a living, that you can pay to learn about your healthcare values and your wishes, and to actually be your decision maker in a time where you would need it. So now I will let Sue talk a little bit about what advanced care planning is and how it relates to finding a medical decision maker.
Thank you, Amanda. Sue Mackey with Out of the Box End of Life Planning. And so advanced care planning, there's been especially a lot of conversation about advanced care planning with our mortality kind of looking right in our faces with COVID and such this past year. And yet there's still confusion because advanced care planning goes by a lot of different names. So it's called advanced care planning. It's called creating your medical directives. It's called your healthcare directives. Just advanced directives. Sometimes people refer to it as a living will, which is a misnomer. And a lot of people are familiar with the 5 Wishes document, which is a type of advanced care planning. So all of those terms are actually an umbrella for whatever paper documentation you might put together to make some decisions ahead of time for how you would want your end of life scenario to look and what your wishes might be. I love what you said, Claire, about if you don't make the decisions for yourself now, someone else will make those decisions. And it might not be the decision that you would prefer. So, so these advanced directives, this advanced care planning, these healthcare directives consist of several different documents, and there's no necessarily strict list. Okay, so the most important piece of an advanced directive is your medical power of attorney, and we'll talk about the role of that person and how to choose that person. That medical power of attorney is that person who knows you extremely well and who you've had just conversations with about your wishes and about what's important to you and how you define quality of life, that's the person who will make those decisions for you if you have that person in place. That's the most important piece of the advanced care planning. Advanced care planning can also include a living will, which is a document that will lay out how you would want to be treated as far as life-sustaining treatment if you're already terminally ill or in a coma. You can also include a dementia directive in your advanced care planning, which is becoming getting more and more press or whatever, more attention these days, as dementia is a number one concern for most people. So there's a dementia directive is something that can be written separately and attached to your medical power of attorney and any other documents. You can also write a personal statement. So there's a lot of different pieces that you can add. My philosophy around this is that the main thing is to have the medical power of attorney. That's the document you're going to take into the hospital with you if you have a hospitalization or any kind of a surgical or health crisis. All the other documentation is truly just, it's support. It's not legal. They're not actual legal documents. They are support for your decision makers. So a living will can be considered legal. We're not even going to go there right now, as it's complicated. But the living will does give some information to your decision makers. The dementia directives gives information. A personal narrative, a statement that you write out in your own words, gives information. All this will support your decision makers in their decision-making process for you. And all of that documentation must correlate with actual conversations you've had with them. And it also can also be support for a healthcare worker who may not agree with the decision that you're making, but you know that you're making the decision based on what the person wants. And so you can say, here, she's written it down. Or your agent can say, here, she's written it down. She took the time to write this out. I know this is what she would want. Let's see, where was I going to go here? So the medical power of attorney form is signed by you as a competent adult. You're the principal, and you're granting authority to an agent, who is the person who's going to step in on your behalf. Here's an example of the medical power of attorney form. This is our Colorado medical power of attorney form. This is just the top half of it. And I think the full document is in the resources that Amanda's going to make sure that you have. Mm-hmm. It's pretty straightforward. You choose an agent. You appoint someone to be your speaker, your representative, your person to speak for you. And then there's space below on this left-hand side to choose a couple of alternates, because it's always possible that the person that you've chosen might not be available. They might predecease you. They might be out of the country. They might be, inundated with family stuff, whatever. So you want to have backups. And I know it's hard enough sometimes to come up with a primary agent, but in an ideal world, you have backups. The only part of this document that can be confusing to people is section 2. And that is when agents' powers begin. And if you read through that yourself, I think you'll see why, because most people will choose that they want their powers to begin when my physician or another qualified medical professional has determined that I'm unable to make or express my own decisions. This seems logical, but on a practicalities, it adds a major layer. It can add a major layer of complication during a decision-making process, because whether or not a person has decisional capacity, which is what this is referring to, is not necessarily clear-cut. A physician sees a patient a few minutes a day. They don't have the interaction that a nurse has. And it's the physician that they're putting this on, that the physician needs to determine decisional capacity. Oftentimes the way it falls out is the physician really doesn't know if the person has decisional capacity. So then they involve the nursing staff. And if that doesn't become clear cut, then they bring in speech therapy who does an evaluation. And if that doesn't make it clear cut, then they bring in an ethics consult. So and if you're awaiting having a medical procedure done or surgery, this is unnecessary time wasted. So what all of us recommend is that the first option is the one that you initial immediately upon my signature. And people look at that and they get nervous. Oh my God, I'm not giving up my rights to speak for myself. You are not giving up your rights to speak for yourself. You will always be asked what you would like to have happen. But if it seems that you're fuzzy, or you just came out of surgery and you're on major pain medications, or you've got early stage dementia and the hospitalization is causing an exacerbation of that and you're in delirium. These decisional capacity can be very fluid. It can go up and down in a day. Any of you who've lived with anyone or know anyone with dementia knows that. And it can certainly be fluid during a hospitalization. So having this immediately upon my signature means that your agent can then also fluidly step in and aid in making those decisions for you. You've already trusted this person with your life because you've chosen them as your agent. So hopefully you trust them to not try to step on your toes here and be able to be an adjunct or a partner with you as far as making decisions if you're in a situation where it needs to be a fluid process. So I think is that where, and Amanda, you had a little story about that particular thing with your own dad, right?
Yeah, this particular section too. My dad had this crazy genetic illness that nobody will have ever heard of, but it acted a lot like MS. And it was a very long progressive process where he began losing his abilities in his late 30s. And by the time he was 50, he was wheelchair bound and had to be in an assisted living. And I'm an only child, and I live in Colorado and he lived in Montana, and I was his agent through this medical power of attorney. And we had discussed it and initialed the first line there. As he declined in those especially the last year, he was still able to make his own decisions, but he just really didn't want to anymore. He just was tired of, he was on just a different stage of his life at that point and trusted me to do that. And so even though he was completely cognizant and his capacity was intact, he preferred to leave the decision-making to me. And that line allowed that to happen fluidly without any interruption.
And I think you said, Amanda, that it also allowed you to be able to call his insurance companies
and all of those sorts of things.
Do all the things that he would have done on himself, but you could represent him because
exactly
this fluidity.
It was very helpful. And I agree that I think we all recommend that that's the best choice to make, especially since the person you're choosing is someone that you trust. That's one of the bedrocks of choosing a decision maker.
I also want to just throw in, not to confuse the medical durable power of attorney with a general power of attorney, also referred to as a financial power of attorney. We make this as complicated as possible, sadly. But the medical durable power of attorney is the person who only deals with healthcare decisions and has every right that you have as far as accessing your medical records, speaking to your doctors, choosing a nursing home, that sort of thing. The general or financial power of attorney handles finances separately. It's two separate jobs that need to be covered.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if you might want to mention the back side of the form.
The back side of the medical power of attorney form is optional. And it's optional to be witnessed and optional to be notarized. We usually recommend that you go ahead and at least witness and or notarize the back of the form, because other states have different rules than Colorado. And so if you are traveling at all elsewhere, at least then it would be more official in another state.
So I was going to talk a little bit about how you structure your power of attorney. And I want to bring something up because I think Amanda saying that her father wasn't, really didn't want to have that responsibility at a certain point, even though he was capable of making decisions. One thing I see a lot, which you would think wouldn't happen, is that ex-spouses or ex-mates often end up being, or even children of your ex often end up being a very good person to be a power of attorney agent for you. Sometimes your relationship with them, I just went through a whole case where the relationship with the ex-wife was better than the relationship with the current wife. And the man needed a guardian, which is the next step up from being a healthcare power of attorney agent. And he desperately wanted his ex-wife to do it because he had voiced everything about how he wanted his life to go and what would happen if his health declined. And so there was a case that they fought in court, and just something to think about. So when it comes to your medical durable power of attorney document, first of all, a lot of people don't realize that a medical power of attorney is the term for the document. An agent is the person who serves that role. So it doesn't have to be created by an attorney. I know Amanda has put up the Colorado form that you can use, or you can kind of borrow a form, a power of attorney that a friend of yours has created, and then just tailor it to yourself. But the main things that you need to include in it, of course, is your name, the city that you live in, the state, and that you're of sound mind. And then when you name your agents, you should also put their name, address, phone number, and if you have their email, any way to get a hold of them in case of an emergency and they're not around you. And choosing successor agents is critical. So you could have, for instance, you could have a brother or sister who lives out of state, or a friend from your church as your primary. And if you don't have another person that you want to use, you could retain a professional who serves in the role of a power of attorney agent. But it does help to have at least a second successor, and maybe even a third. Then the other thing is when you're looking at your document, as Sue said, that the medical power of attorney document is the main legal document. And a lot of things that you place in a living will, which is what happens if I'm in a coma, or what happens if I'm not able to recover from whatever it is that's going on, that it's only going to be on a downhill from there. I think it's just easier to put those things, if possible, in your medical durable power of attorney. Durable means that it lasts indefinitely, that there's not an expiration date. So when I have been with people who I serve as power of attorney or guardian for, if the medical power of attorney document is 2 pages, try to keep it as less wordy as possible, the doctors will read it. But if it starts going on and on with a lot of information that is, well, if this happens or that happens, and a lot of legalese verbiage, then they're not going to read it, and your wishes aren't going to be honored if for some reason your agent isn't there with you at the time. So the other thing that I think is important to have in your power of attorney is a HIPAA release. And sometimes we're willing to have others have all kinds of information about our health, but we don't want them making a decision for us. So if you happen to be in the hospital and your power of attorney gives HIPAA release to a friend of yours, but that friend isn't your agent, if they call the hospital and say, I want to know how Mark is doing right now, the hospital can release that information if there is a HIPAA release for that particular person. And then any particular personal values or wishes are really important to have in there. A lot of times people will also say what they want to have happen with their remains. Do they want to donate their remains or parts of their remains? Do they want to be buried or do they want to be cremated? And having seen a lot of families go through this and have never had that discuss between them, it's really important to tell somebody what it is that you would want and to have it in your document. You also need to revoke all prior medical power of attorneys or healthcare power of attorneys and put the effective date. As Sue said, put your effective date when you sign it, because you don't know what's going to happen. You could walk out of an attorney's office and get hit by a car, and you don't want anybody having to take the time to try to find your primary physician or whoever it is you designated as saying that you are no longer capable of making a decision. So keep it short and keep the most important things in there as far as what it is that you want if you're not able to say for yourself.
Okay. Could I add that people do not have to have an attorney to do any of these documents. You can get them off of the websites. You can use the documents that Amanda has forwarded to you. You do not have to engage an attorney. And things that are handwritten are, in fact, in some ways, as Claire said, make an impact on the healthcare providers in a way that looking at a document that's been executed by an attorney may not. And the handwritten ones can also be more impressive to family members because they look at that document and they see the handwriting of the person that they love, and it makes a real impact when it's in their own hand.
Right. And attorneys, because I deal with this so much, attorneys tend to put in a lot of, they pull the information off of their website or whatever as they're starting their base document. And so there's often information in there that has nothing to do with you. They may talk about your spouse and you don't have a spouse, and they don't remove that from the document. So there's lots of extra things that are in there that...
Can I just say they are incredibly expensive.
I'm sorry, what? They're incredibly
expensive to go through.
It is expensive. It is expensive.
God.
Yes.
I would like to add that I was able to get an attorney considered one of the best in the States, an elder attorney who did my paperwork. Yes, he did have all that extra stuff in there, but it was really worth talking to him. And there is something in there that people want to consider, and that is a statement that clarifies if the agent spends money or their liability financially needs to be clarified.
You're absolutely right. There needs to be, that they can't be held responsible for decisions that you made and they're carrying out. So there are real benefits to having an attorney look at your document. And one thing that I've learned in the past 10 or so years, 15 years, is that the elder law attorneys are a whole different group of people than, a personal injury attorney or such. These are people who have experienced the kinds of things that all of us are going to experience sometime in our lives, and they have a heck of a lot of heart. I don't think on any of the meetings I had with attorneys in the past number of years that, almost every single one of them at the end of the meeting said, "Can I hug you?" And I think it's because there's just a different kind of warmth and understanding that where any one of us or any one of the people that we care about could be in the same boat at some point. And so there is value, but there also is sometimes just words that need to be eliminated because they just don't apply to you.
So you can get free legal aid if you qualify.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have the website for the free legal aid, one of the places that provides that on the website that I forwarded everyone yesterday that I will forward again after we're done today. So I wanted to, Claire, talk a little bit about when someone hires someone like you, a paid professional, what does that process look like? What does it cost?
Okay, before I do that, the one thing that I think is very important on the medical power of attorney is to get it notarized at your bank. This way someone says, yes, this is your signature, and there's not a question about that. And it's one of those documents that you can change as often as you want. So if you are with a friend and they say, oh yeah, my power of attorney says this or that, and you think, oh, I'd like that on mine, you can go the next day to your, make that change, back to your notary and change it. Just make sure that you revoke any previous ones. So I am a professional healthcare agent, and there are not a lot of us, unfortunately, in the Boulder County area. But what you're looking for when you're selecting someone is that they're on the same page with you in terms of they kind of speak your language. They're not, if you like someone who's just like really upfront but no nonsense, you don't want to have someone who's, Casper Milquetoast. You want someone who's going to be kind of on the same mode as you and fit your personal style. You want to go through your medical power of attorney document with this person and talk out any of the issues. And they may also give you some additional ideas that you need to think about. They're going to ask you to complete a medical history, and they're going to want to know who are the people to call who might know more about you, because situations arise and that healthcare agent, even though he or she may have, understood your decisions and everything, they might want to just bang it around with one of your closest friends and say, she can't talk right now. This is what she has said to me, but this situation is just a little bit different. For instance, I have a COVID clause in mine. I don't want to be on a ventilator, but if I get COVID, I'll certainly be on a ventilator for a certain period of time. So those are the kinds of things that, it's helpful for having those discussions with your friends, your other church members or other group members. You will, generally the cost involved with this has to do with the amount of time the person is the professional is spending with you in terms of helping you with your document or making change to it, talking to you about it, sending emails back and forth with you about it. If you are in good health, there's not really a need to see your professional medical power of attorney agent every week or every month. Sometimes it might be 6 months in between. You just need to keep in touch and keep in contact so that this way they know if you've had a health change or a situation change. Medical power of attorney, it's not just medical things that they're usually responsible for. They're also responsible for well-being. So that's when you have said to them, I never want to live in this particular assisted living if something was to happen to me. But they will work with your financial power of attorney if you're not able to communicate your needs to figure out what is the appropriate place for you and do you have the funding for it. So the cost range anywhere probably from $100 an hour and can probably go up to $200 an hour. And most agents charge on a 15-minute increments. That means if you speak with them for 7 minutes, then you're charged for 15 minutes. Others do it like me. I charge by the minute. I know it sounds kind of weird and silly, but it's much more easy for me to say my phone call started at this time and ended at this time, so that's how many minutes. I don't want to figure out what percentage it fits into a 15-minute period of time. So the site, the resources site that Amanda has put up has some names, and I'm always happy to give names of other people if I'm not the right person. I think it's It's such an individual decision, so you need to find somebody who you feel totally comfortable with, that you can share some very delicate information that you wouldn't necessarily share with others. And you should also give them if you have health issues, you should probably give them a house key, or at least tell them how they can access your home in case of an emergency, because I've certainly had to do that at times. Okay.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, Amanda, I'm wondering what people should look for and what qualities in choosing an agent.
Yeah, this segues really nicely into this. If you're looking at a professional, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare for a minute here, a little video interlude, so you can stop listening to us for at least like 2 minutes or so, and then we'll reconvene. And this video kind of just shows, it's a cute little video, kind of funny, about what you might look for when you're trying to choose someone to be your healthcare agent. Everybody sees it? Yep.
Your healthcare proxy, like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to, I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right? Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to. If I'm in town, check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Look, heck yeah. I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going with. You never let them resuscitate. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never. I got this. I totally got this.
How can you even talk about this?
I can't, okay? I just can't.
Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No, I can't.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay. So the cat like, bleh, and then he's like, Wah! Oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, we'll get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be. I mean, I'd be sad, but I'd have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke for her. So I think I can do that for you. Let's talk about what you've been wanting.
Stop that. Always takes me a second to get back where I need to be here. So that's kind of just a funny little interlude to what that looks like. But we actually also have a tool that is on that website that you'll have a link to if you haven't already seen it. We're back with the PowerPoint, right, Constance?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. And that's from the American Bar Association. And it's a really simple little tool that you can use if you're thinking about whether it be professionals or not, a few people, and you're not sure who's the best choice. If you're really just struggling with that, this form allows you to put 3 different names in there, and then there's a list of 10 different qualities, and you can assign whether or not each person has those qualities. And at the end, you're probably going to be left with someone that's the obvious choice, that checks the most boxes. When I'm talking with people about struggling between one person and another as their healthcare agent, the things that I tell them that are most important to look for is someone that's willing to serve in the role and really speak on your behalf. They're willing to act on your wishes and are able to separate their own feelings from whatever decision it was that you would have made, even if it wasn't the decision that they would make in that situation. It's someone that knows you somewhat well, at least as far as your health conditions are concerned, and understands what's most important to you. They're willing to talk about sensitive issues, medical problems, and will listen to what your wishes are. It's ideal if they'll be available long into the future, but sometimes that's just not the way that it works. So choosing the person that's most matched to you is what I think is most important. Sometimes they need to be able to handle themselves in situations of conflict where say a friend of yours and a doctor, they may not agree on what a decision is, that they're able to get in there and really advocate for what it is that you want. And even be able to advocate in a situation where a hospital or a physician or a nursing home isn't as responsive as they need to be, that they're able to step in there and help make things happen. So this tool will be on the website that you'll be able to use. And the next part this leads into is, we've talked about the medical power of attorney form, what a healthcare agent is, how you go about choosing them. And once you've gotten through all that, then it's, how do I prepare this person? What do I talk to them about? How do I communicate to my healthcare agent what's most important to me? So then when it comes time to make those decisions, they can confidently go through and do that for you. And so one of the tools that we use at the Conversation Project is called the Conversation Starter Kit. And this will also be on your resource page of links. And the version that we use here in Boulder County, we call it condensed. And we call it that way because the original starter kit is about 12 to 15 pages long. It's great. It has a lot to work through. But this really allows you to just get started and have something that's, I won't say easy, but fairly simple to look at and complete, so that you're ready and armed with something to help you start the conversation and continue this conversation with whoever your healthcare agent happens to be. So this document, this is just the top half of it. Again, we chose to keep the documents just screenshots, so we didn't get bogged down in actually looking at the complete documents during this time. But this, you can see the very first question and how this document is framed is, as you think about how you want to live at the end of your life, what's most important to you? And so then you sit with that, and Constance would say you'd sit with your cup of tea or your wine and you think about that, and you finish the sentence and you say, what matters the most to me at end of life is. There's not a right or wrong answer to this question. And if you poll 100 different people, you're going to get 100 different types of answers to it. It might be you might have a bulleted list of 10 or 12 things that are really important. You might just write one sentence that encapsulates what makes the biggest difference to you. It's, they've got a few examples under there, like being able to recognize your children. Some people really do want to be in the hospital at end of life if possible. Being able to say goodbye to their loved ones. And this will frame the rest of the questions on the Conversation Starter Kit, which we'll look at in a minute. But once you've answered that first question, you'll see, when you do this with a lot of people, all the different answers that they come up with. And in this graphic, the bigger the word is, the more often that people say this in response to what's most important to them at end of life. And so this isn't surprising, right? I want it to be peaceful. I want to be comfortable. I want to be with the people that I love. I want it to be as natural as possible. There's going to be some spiritual and religious beliefs mixed in with some people's ideas of what they want at the end of life. And around where we live, I need to make one of my own of these. People talk about their pets, that they want to have their pets near them, and that they want to have access to the outdoors. And so those are things that maybe are a little more regional, but I definitely think they would show up in Boulder County. So once you've answered the big picture question, the next part of the starter kit is a series of scales. These scales, one side is not better than the other, one is not better than 5, or vice versa. This is a continuum, and wherever you fall on this is correct. And I have seen people fall on both sides of it and all the way in between, and then change as time goes on. And that's why it's really important to look at these advanced directives and advanced care planning on a repeated basis. Because as you not only age, but as your health status changes, you might change your mind about some of your wishes and need to go back and revisit those. So you can see some examples of the scale questions on the starter kit here. This is not all of them. I think there's 10 or 12 of them on there. So it's by no means overwhelming. It's totally doable. And these will really get at more specific kinds of values. The one that we all think is really telling about a person is the third one here on the bottom left. What are your concerns about treatment? 1 is I'm worried that I won't get enough care. 5 is that I'm worried that I'll get overly aggressive care. I find that most people that I've talked to, I think it's just the demographic, are worried that they're going to get overly aggressive care, that they're going to keep me on machines, and I don't want to be on machines. I'm going to get more time in the hospital than I want. But there are certainly people in different groups that have felt like they've never gotten fair or proper care at the medical system, and are actually worried that they're not going to get enough care. And so there's a lot of variation in these, and that's fine. This is what you'll use when it's time to talk to your agent so that they can understand what matters to you in your unique situation. So that will be on there, and it's a great way to start what is really just a vital and important conversation so that someone can be confident to step in and make decisions for you when that time comes. So,
can I point out something here? Is that most of us don't start thinking about having a healthcare power of attorney agent until we're in our 60s, 70s, 80s. And the truth is, if you know anyone from 18 years on up, they should have one also. And one of the things that's important in choosing your agent is that that person, even if you don't appear to be capable of answering a question, should always ask you, do you want them to go ahead with the surgery now? This is what would happen if they don't do the surgery. This is what would happen if they do the surgery. You know, the possibilities of what would happen. And even if you have dementia, you have a right to be asked that question. So something to think about also.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions of advanced care planning. It's not just for old people, you know,
Right.
It's not just for people over the age of 65. It is really for any adult. Getting that message out there is sort of challenging, but we definitely try. I want to turn it over to Sue for a minute, who's got some different practical questions for specifically for solo agers and how they might address those at near end of life.
Thanks, Amanda. I wanted to comment that starter kit, if you do resonate with that and you find it helpful, that can be attached to as part of your advanced directives. Constance, I think you've done that, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
filled that out, and
I'm sorry, is that on online what you're sending out? I had to answer a phone call.
Yeah,
Yes.
the website, the Aging Solo Resources, I'll send it out again. It's a link and all the documents are on the same page.
You know how email tends to disappear down below. So, okay,
Yeah.
sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. Yeah, so anything like that you can attach to your medical power of attorney as support is helpful. This is a tool that I've created that I use with people I work with, and it may or may not resonate with you, but the sample of it is on the resource page that Amanda's going to send you again after we're done. So it'll be top of mind. But it's what it is a thought jogger or a template inspiration for you writing your own personal statement. So writing in your own words, maybe if you don't have to write it in your own handwriting. You can do this on your computer. It'll come out in your own voice, and that's what's really key, is that it be your own voice as opposed to the voice of a boilerplate attorney's form. And so there's different sections to it, and you can address each section in your own way. I'm sending, what's in this document that Amanda's going to give you is some wording that I've come up with that sometimes people will choose to use it word for word, and other times they'll delete the whole paragraph and say it in their own languaging, but it'll get them started. So it's just to get you started. To know that initially in this document, in an ideal world, you're supporting your caregivers, saying, I'm writing this statement as a gift to you. I'll do my best here to share with you how I feel about my potential treatment at the end of life, what my values are, my comfort, spiritual needs are, and what my goals of care are, so that you're not making decisions for me without guidance. And my purpose in writing this is to reduce the burdens of guilt or conflict that often arise among family members when tough medical decisions need to be made for someone else, and also to clarify my intentions with my healthcare providers. So something along those lines, an intro. You are doing this as a gift to the people who have the weighty burden, can be burden, of making decisions for you. It's also a way of getting what you want. and being able to have your own voice about the level of care that you'll receive. Then you might want to make a few comments about your general thoughts about your end-of-life care. Asking your people to use their best judgment to distinguish between treatments that are humane and palliative, which means for the purpose of comfort, or those that only postpone the moment of death. I'm trying to think where I pulled this wording from. Deepak Chopra. If I could choose, I would love a conscious death that is characterized as a spiritual experience, not a medical emergency. So however you would put it in your words, what your basic feelings about end-of-life care are for yourself. Then moving on to quality of life, quality of life and how you define it. How do you define quality of life? And that's just your free flow thoughts of for some people, life is not worth living if they can't dance, if they can't be physical, if they can't ride their bike. And for other people, they're fine. They'll be fine to be sedentary as long as their mind is still working and they're still able to engage with family and friends. So these are big questions to consider. And that's why I recommend doing this in a Word document, because it'll change over time. As you revisit these documents, which you should do periodically, it's not none of this is a one and done. And it should be very simple to redo any of these documents at any point in time as things change, or your thoughts or feelings change, or you have experiences that have an influence on you. You'll want to address your feelings about life-sustaining treatments. I put a paragraph in mine saying that life-sustaining treatment on a time-limited basis is acceptable to me under the following conditions, and that is to allow my agent or family time to make decisions for my care that they're comfortable with. So, buying time for loved ones to arrive at my bedside before my death occurs, or to allow for organ transplant for the benefit of another. Those are the circumstances under which I would accept life-sustaining treatment. Other people, no life-sustaining treatment, that's it, no respirator, they don't want any part of it, and that's fine also. But this is the place to put that into writing. We talked about defining quality of life. Addressing dementia or cognitive decline is helpful here, though some people will choose also to write a separate dementia directive. And then your thoughts about welcoming what I call an exit ramp, as in, if I'm not enjoying the quality of life that is my definition of quality of life at any given time, I am giving you permission to take an exit ramp, i.e., I get an infection, don't give me the antibiotic. I have a new diagnosis, don't treat it. You'd be giving me a gift to allow me an exit out of this body that is no longer serving me. So again, these are my personal feelings. I find they resonate with some people, but if you read this and you have an aversion and you go, no, that's not how I feel, then delete that whole thing and write in what you feel about taking an exit ramp. There are people who want to live life as long as possible, and that's the most important thing to them. So express that. You'll want to include thoughts on stopping eating and drinking at a certain point in time, that you do or don't want to be kept alive by tube feeding. And then this also gives a place to share your thoughts about what you think happens when you die. I think it's helpful for those that are left behind to have some feeling of you having a sense of peace with what comes next. It's a place, there's also a place here to share what makes you feel comfortable when you're not feeling well. So I did this with a couple not too long ago, and he wants the room dark, dark, dark. When she doesn't feel good, she wants the curtains open and she wants all the lights on. He wants no TV, he doesn't want the noise. She wants the TV on for company. This is the place to express those things, because obviously it's very individual, and people who are offering care often assume that the person they're taking care of wants what they would want, and that may not be the case. So this is a place to try to get what you want as far as being comfortable at the end and being kept comfortable at the end. It's a place. This is also a place to share your thoughts about hospice and to share a hospice selection if you prefer. If you've already made a hospice selection, you can indicate that here. There's a place to talk about your feelings about treatment of pain, whether or not you want to be vigorously treated, and that's okay if you're non-responsive, or if you want periods of lucidity. So whatever your feelings are on pain control. And there's a section to talk about your thoughts about your financial use of financial resources, which is often an elephant in the room. We often don't want to talk about finances when we're talking about people's health and the end of life, but a lot of times there is a lot of waste. So it's a place to say, I don't want unnecessary procedures or diagnostics run. And it's also a place to address allowing reasonable compensation for your agent or family if they incur expenses and in their taking care of you at the end of life, travel expenses or loss of work expenses, that sort of thing. And a place to express, to share what sensitivities you might have with different medications. And a section on your comfort and your spiritual support. So if you are, if you're involved in a particular community, or you have a certain spiritual practice that would be supportive to you at the end of life, it's a place to share that. And then the very end of it, there's an offering to suggest a remembrance ritual, as in a way that you might want to remember me in memoriam is. So, go for a walk. You might consider going for a walk in nature in my honor on my birthday, or on my death day, you might want to eat chocolate ice cream, or whatever, something that you're giving to the person as an offering of, this is how a way you might remember me that would be meaningful. So it's involved, but I think sitting down and just writing your feelings about your end of life is an overwhelming process. So this is an option for kind of jogging, remembering, getting your thoughts going.
Okay. It's important that we move on. We're kind of running a little over time. Yeah. So I'm wondering, we were going to talk about belongings, what happens to your stuff. I'm wondering if you could try to tighten this up a little bit so that we have time for questions.
I can be very brief on that. One of the big questions people ask, especially people aging solo, is what's going to happen to all my stuff? And the answer to that, if you haven't made arrangements, is it'll go through the public administrator, and they'll probably bring in a dumpster, and people will everything will just get cleaned out. So a way around that, and there is a document on the resource page that Amanda's providing on how to use a personal property memorandum. And it's really just a list of anything that's of importance to you in your life that you would like to see go to certain people. And I think it brings a lot of people comfort to be able to write this list out and say, this painting's been in our family for 3 generations. I want it to go to cousin Joey or something like that. So that's something to do with that cup of tea or that glass of wine in the evening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, Amanda, I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about being prepared in the time of COVID.
Yes, and I can be brief on this as well, because this is what I'm showing you right now is another kind of brief starter kit tool that you'll have access to. And you're going to need some time to look at it and think about it to make decisions. But what this does on the back is gives you a chance to write about your feelings, about what you would want and what you wouldn't want, what your fears are, if you were to become seriously ill, specifically with COVID-19. Because as Claire mentioned earlier, she has in her normal advance directive that she doesn't want to be on a ventilator. But maybe with COVID, if the situation was that she might recover at this point in her life, she would want to be on a ventilator. And so people's wishes, we've discovered during COVID for life-sustaining treatment, how long they're willing to deal with that, are different than they might be in their normal day-to-day sort of life with whatever diagnoses they have. And so this guide will help you specifically look at COVID-19 with your health conditions, maybe encourage and give you a chance to speak with your physician about how serious COVID illness might affect you in your situation, so that you can make any different kinds of decisions or wishes known to your decision maker for that specific situation. And the last thing we want to cover before we open it up for questions is just briefly the MOST form, because usually someone will ask about it. And so this is what it looks like, and I'm going to let Sue expound a little bit about how it's used and who it's for.
Okay. The MOST form was originally, the original intention of it was for people who are at the end of life or who are living with a life-limiting illness, so they're in and out of an ER frequently, and maybe getting to a point where they want to limit the amount of aggressive care that they get. This is a form that is available at your doctor's office. It's usually a bright green. They call it dragon green or something like that. Anyway, it's this bright green form. The intention is for it to be filled out with your physician. So you can pull it up online and see it and familiarize yourself with it, but it must be filled out with the physician and signed by the physician. The key piece to the MOST form is the section A, which is regarding CPR, whether or not you would want CPR. If you do want CPR, do not fill this form out, because that's the default. You'll get CPR regardless of having a form around, and having the form can actually complicate things. But if you have had a conversation with your physician around your particular medical situation, your age, your comorbidities, which sadly now everyone knows what that word means because of COVID, having a specific conversation with your physician around whether or not CPR is something that would benefit you, that you could survive to an acceptable quality of life. If the answer to that question is no, then you would want to fill out either a no CPR form, which is the same thing as a DNR, or the MOST form saying no CPR in section A. The main thing is that I want to impress on everyone is that it's really important that you make extra time with your doctor to do this. If you're 65 or older, rough cutoff, but in later years, it's important to next time you're going to see your physician, ask for an extra time for an end of life discussion, and have this discussion around CPR.
And that can be covered by Medicare. That's a Medicare benefit, an advanced care planning conversation with your physician. So you can call and make an appointment and do that via telehealth. And you won't have to get weighed or get your blood pressure taken or any of that.
Yeah, and if you don't ask for the extra time, and you need, this conversation takes some time. So you can't just throw it at your physician as oh, by the way, in your 12-minute appointment that you have. So.
All right.
Yes.
And so this, this is the resource page. You got the link from yesterday. I will send it again, but this is what it'll look like when you bring it up. And it'll have links to all the forms we talked about, some resources to find a professional healthcare agent, the Rocky Mountain Legal Center, which I think Dinah put in the chat earlier. The link for that will be on here. And you can look through those and use them as you would like. And then I'll leave this up while we're answering questions. Actually, I'll leave the next one up as well. This is our contact information. If you need Sue or Claire or myself for anything, at the Conversation Project, we have volunteers trained in advanced care planning, in helping with your advanced directive documents, questions, and most importantly, they can help you start or continue a conversation with whomever it is that you end up needing to have the conversation with. I'll leave that up for a minute. I'll let Constance start taking questions, and then the last slide is some events we have coming up that I'll talk about a little bit more right at the end.
Okay. So I'm not going to be able to see you because we have the PowerPoint up. So if you have a question, why don't you just state it and state your name?
I have a question.
I know I've talked a couple times, but I'm just shocked that I'm the only man among 20-some people participating in this. I really am. It must suggest something about who's interested and who's reading. That's all.
Who likes to be prepared?
Yes.
Right.
You're not the only one.
Oh, thank you, Maxfield.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's true, though. It's true that we often see some of that gets to be a function, and it can't all be this, but that women live longer than men, and so there's more of them left as age groups, cohorts age. But it is, I don't know if it's generational or what it is about it, and if it will change as this current generation ages.
Yes.
I'm Karen, and I have a few comments and questions. Number one, I lined up 3 exceptional medical durable POAs, exceptionally qualified. Each of them left Boulder and retired. So that's an example of, I mean, who do you know has 3 exceptional people, each of whom leaves Boulder? That's number one. Number two, I wanted to ask about this decisional capacity. I was confused about, when do you sign immediately? Do you sign that when you're totally cogent?
Yes, so I'll answer that, Karen. So at the time that you're filling this form out, you need to have decisional capacity. So it's important that people fill this out now. If you don't have it, fill it out now when you are well. If you are in the hospital and you're going in and out of having decisional capacity, nobody is going to be asking you to fill out that form then. So it should be filled out now. And so that those 2 choices get ticked or signed at the time that you're completing the document.
Okay. Also, is there a financial liability form? Because I do want to protect anybody who helps me with end of life. I think that's a very critical issue, that they are fully excused from paying a penny of their own money. Is there a specific form that attaches that to your assets or your financial manager or whatever?
Claire, you're on mute. Claire, am I on mute? You're on mute.
Sorry. Karen, you don't need a separate form for that. It should be part of your power of attorney agent, power of attorney document. Just should say that your agent is not responsible for your financial commitments that are made for health things, and they're not liable. So there should be, and I can actually provide some wording for that. Probably Sue or Constance can also do the same thing.
It would also be a good idea to tell your agent never to sign anything regarding money unless they really understand what it's about.
Yeah, and your healthcare agent shouldn't generally be signing.
That's correct.
To do with your money, that should be your financial power of attorney, who also is not liable financially.
Another thing is, nobody mentioned this critically important DNR bracelet, which is, number one, unsightly and garish, but it is the Colorado State authorized DNR bracelet. And lastly, I wanted to say that an attorney who was recommended to me by one of you told me that the dementia directive is not authorized or acknowledged in Colorado. Do you know about that?
Sure, I will speak to that. So yes, it's not an official legal state of Colorado document. We do not have a provision for a dementia directive in our body of law. However, as all of these documents have been referred to as guides, that is in fact really what they are. They guide the people who are making decisions for you. The dementia directive, which is something that we can and should and will do a separate presentation on, is really something that directs your family members or your decision makers, I should say, and your healthcare providers in how you want to be treated if you are in end-stage dementia. And we have forms on the Conversation Project website. We have dementia directives. Again, there is not an official Colorado form. So that is correct, Karen.
Thank you. And I will make sure that I have those on the specific Aging Solo resource page. And thank you for mentioning the bracelet. You probably got it from a Ward and Sign down in Denver. I believe that is on the resource page. You would send your DNR, signed order, or your MOST form that's signed into that company. And that is an official then bracelet that has your resuscitation status on it.
And I think this is a segue into Sharon Hagen's question. Sharon asked, who uses the MOST form and where should I keep it? It should be displayed actually on the front of your refrigerator, as a kind of garish as that seems. There is a reason that it is, by the way, the name is Vulcan Green, Sue.
Vulcan Green, yes.
Yep. It is Vulcan Green so that paramedics coming into your home would notice it quickly. And so having it in a drawer will not protect you from being resuscitated in your home. And Karen has done the absolute right thing. She's serious, I presume, about not being resuscitated. So she has a bracelet that would alert paramedics to the fact that she does not want to be resuscitated. Now, people wear those bracelets for other reasons too. And so I'm trusting that that the emergency personnel would look at it to see whether you have an allergy or whether you don't want to be resuscitated, because various things can be put on those bracelets. If you have a MOST form, it should be in your electronic medical record at your doctor's office. And it also should be taken with you into the hospital when you go. Now, it is my hope always that when you give it to your primary care doctor in the clinic, that it also is seen in the hospital. If your clinic and the hospital have a blended record. Now, people are learning in this time of COVID that many times their clinic is not connected to a healthcare system, and so those records are not being shared. So it's important to take it with you. And hopefully once it has been scanned into a hospital medical record, it should pop up every time. But the safest thing is to bring it with you.
Yeah, you know, it's not a bad thing also to put it in kind of one of those plastic sleeves on your refrigerator and to stick a list of your medications behind it. So the paramedics will normally grab that with them and take it to the hospital. And at least some of the hospitals I work with, they have it, you know, when I'm there meeting someone. They have that and they have the medication list.
Yes.
And that's really helpful for
and
those.
And it wouldn't hurt to put your medical durable power of attorney document in there so that they have the names and the phone numbers of people to contact.
Exactly. Yeah.
My aunt just had DNR tattooed on her chest between her breasts.
Yeah. You know what, Willow, that actually was tested in a court and didn't work.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of
one of the reasons, Willow, is because it's not signed by the doctor.
Sorry, I missed what DNR is.
Do not resuscitate.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
And then Lori asked this earlier, and thank you for putting it in here again. How do you revoke a prior MDPOA? My understanding, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, is that when you sign, whichever one is most recently signed is the valid medical durable power of attorney. Is that correct?
You just also need the statement that you revoke previous ones that you have written. And it helps if you are creating a new one, making a change, to send it to your physician absolutely to your agents or anybody else that. But you need to have that statement.
If you're doing a new one, say I revoke the MDPOA of this date. Now, and it's also, again, here really, really, really important that you communicate to the people who are your decision makers that you had an old one so that they know.
And then it looks like Sue answered the question, but I'll read it for everyone. There can be a medical power of attorney and a different financial power of attorney. That is correct. It can, like for my dad, I was both. I did both roles, but it was 2 separate pieces of paper, and it's 2 separate roles. So it can be the same person. You need to use 2 documents, or it can be 2 different people if they're well matched. One's better matched for healthcare and one's better matched to do the financial piece of it. It can be 2 different people.
And they should know who each other are.
Yes.
When an issue comes up, you know, especially if someone needs to go into assisted living or something, they need to make sure that their finances are there. And
maybe it's my age, and I'm only 65. This is all very overwhelming, and it would be useful to have not a summary, but a kind of, this is the most important, these 3 or 4 things, if possible, or, you know, sometime in the future, I don't know.
And one thing we have here, I have this slide up right now, and it's a couple of events that the various of us have coming up in the next month or 2. This advanced care planning open house, this first one, I will be running that with my volunteers, and it's a chance to actually make an appointment one-on-one with one of us for up to an hour. And we can then really dive into whatever it is your questions are about what's most important, which documents you need to do right away, and then what the next steps are. And then maybe even helping, you know, figure out how you might communicate these things to the people that matter to you. And so that link will be available to you in the follow-up email, where you can just sign up for that appointment, and we can do it on Zoom, or we can do it by telephone if that's more comfortable for you, and you can really drill down for it then. The second thing on here is a really new, it's something that I'm just starting to organize, and it's out of these presentations, out of people coming to the Conversation Project, not having anyone to make decisions, having all these questions about how it's different for them aging solo. We didn't have a group that was coherent here in Boulder County, and so we're organizing one at True with the Conversation Project. Totally free. Whoever wants to participate is welcome. Just send me an email if you want to be on that email list. We will have our first meeting March 8th at 4 o'clock. And we can drill down into more specific topics during those meetings as well. And then Sue is having a death cafe, which is a little looser conversation about all sorts of things around death. It's kind of an open forum on January 21st. So you can probably get some help there, but if you're going to take anything away from this presentation today, it's if you do not have a medical durable power of attorney filled out with a healthcare agent, that is the most important thing and the first step that you can take.
Okay, and I'm also going to respond to Stephanie Rudy's question about medical aid in dying. I do think, Stephanie, it's a whole nother meeting, and I think we will have one to talk about that, because that is a decision that you have to be fully, you have to have decisional capacity when you make decisions about medical aid in dying, and you have to have decisional capacity when you ingest the medication. And so it really is a kind of a whole different paradigm than what we're talking about here, where people are lacking capacity.
And Annie's question here is similar. We've got a couple minutes left, and we're going to be respectful of your time here. If one should take their own life when truly needing to go, what are the legalities around having friends present? I think this gets into the medical aid in dying question, and we certainly can look at that in a separate hour because people are present often during that time. I don't know. I guess that's what the answer is. I've never heard of there being legal repercussions for that.
There's not if you're doing it using the legal state of Colorado medical aid in dying process.
Yeah. And then she asks, also, please remind me where to get a form I can use for a third MPOA and how to state the first 2 have priority. So the Colorado one, the primary one is the very first line. Whoever you put on that first line, that's going to be first line of defense. And then you'll have 2 alternates. And generally people will go with the second one second, the third one third, but you could just write in there your priority numbers, and that would work just fine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I want to thank everybody who has been on this call. Your questions have been excellent. And I want to thank Amanda and Claire and Sue for participating in this. We will have a recording of it. Somebody asked about that. And I'm assuming it will be on the Conversation Project website.
And I will try to just send one email with all of this information. I'll do my best to try to keep it concise and understandable.
I would like to make, I think, would be a useful comment. It's from way back about when you make your medical power of attorney effective. I made mine effective immediately for the very reason that you said. I trust them to do the best for me when I'm unconscious. Certainly, I could do that when I am conscious. And I, last month, had to deal with that for my sister, who probably was just starting to get into dementia when she filled out the forms and was kind of paranoid, and she wanted to go through the whole thing of having everything documented. So when the time came, it was so complicated, it would have been just taking too long to do what needed to be done for her best care.
I appreciate that real life example, because that does
Yes.
actually happen. So.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So thank you, everybody. You have been a great audience, and it is not our intention to be leaving anybody feeling high and dry and not knowing what they're going to be doing. Amanda is going to be providing you with a lot of resources going forward, so that if you're feeling right now like you're totally overwhelmed, know that we're going to be here to help you kind of pull the pieces together.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Wow.
Have an excellent day.
You as well. Bye.
This was fabulous. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.